Hello, hello, and welcome to this episode of the Nerds of the North podcast, episode number 50, a huge milestone in which we will be doing basically nothing for it. If you're here, welcome. But we are going to be discussing She Hulk today, and that's probably about the bulk of it. We might discuss some other things if we happen to come upon them, but yeah, otherwise, um, I'm host number one, Matt, and joining me as always is host number two.
Nick,
And tell me, what the hell do you think of the episode?
I was pleasantly surprised actually. I was going into this with very little expectations. I thought it was probably going to be pretty awful just based on the previous Marvel shows. However, I have found that the first episodes of most Marvel shows are usually their best. So I still don't have a ton of hope for this show going forward. However, I did enjoy the first episode quite a bit.
Sure.
I thought it was pretty funny. I laughed. I cried. I snorted. No, I was gonna make a color joke there. Just so you know, I do not do drugs. The only drug I do currently is alcohol. I will say cocaine.
Yeah, and just
Not cocaine, caffeine.
I dabble in cocaine.
Caffeine. I do caffeine. That's my
Oh shit.
other drug that I do. So caffeine and an occasional alcoholic beverage. Already getting off track here for.
I mean, that's just tradition around these parts.
Yeah. Overall, I really liked it. I thought it was a lot pretty fun. It definitely had a different vibe. I do have one criticism. I don't know if we want to dive into that right now.
Sure, please hit me.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I want to build it up a little bit. Like, what is Nick's criticism?
What is it?
It's
I mean,
not
what is it?
criticism for the show. It's just Marvel overall, specifically with their new female characters. I kind of feel like they're all alike. Like they're all sort of like joke bots. They're kind of quirky, jokey women. Like I think almost most of them that we've been seeing that are like the main characters of their show all kind of have the same personality. Which
that's it's funny you mentioned that because it's something my wife and I were discussing earlier. We watched the episode this morning, so it's pretty fresh in my mind. But yeah, like the new Avengers or whatever they're going to be kind of building towards as like the new main core group of heroes. There's like no one serious in the group, right? Like because that was an observation we made that is very similar to yours, and that like Kamala kind of a goober, She-Hulk kind of a goober, Kate Bishop kind of a goober. Like,
yeah, totally, I agree with that. I mean, there's probably more, but the only main female character in the MCU that I feel has sort of a different personality is Wanda. Like she definitely, I mean, Black Widow does too, but even like the new Black Widow, what is her name?
oh yeah, Natasha's sister. Shoot.
Yeah. Even she is like super jokey, but kind of in a different way. Like she's a little bit more intense, I guess. But I like that intensity. So
Yelena. But yeah, no, like I am kind of curious. I mean, I guess to be fair, like if we're going to be having kind of a new core group put together, I don't know how integrated Moon Knight usually gets on like group superhero properties. What was that?
Criticism is all female characters are kind of similar.
Yeah, because yeah, like I mean, I don't know. Like Kamala is definitely. I mean, she's basically like the origin and everything. If you spoke in general terms, like she's basically Peter Parker. The only difference being that she's Muslim and has different superpowers. But like kid going to school, younger, inexperienced, not really knowing what they're doing, and needing someone to like kind of guide them on their way, right? Um, whereas like She-Hulk, I think She-Hulk is like kind of more of a more unique take on like the superhero stereotype if we're going to use all the other characters we've seen already. Because like ScarJo with Black Widow, like she definitely was like the dark and mysterious type. She really wasn't much of a goober. Whereas like She-Hulk, I think kind of toes that line between being kind of goofy but being serious. Like, and I think we're also going to see a lot of development on in She-Hulk's part as the show goes on, because she clearly isn't really that interested in being a superhero at this juncture. Um, I don't know if that's going to really change or not. I don't know a ton about She-Hulk from comics.
Well, before we move on from this point, because we've kind of had this conversation in the past. It's been a little while since we've had it, specifically with the female characters in the MCU, how they kind of, as one YouTuber likes to call them, I believe, no fun mommies or something like that.
Yeah,
Like they're all
yeah,
kind of like, at least before that, they were kind of like a little like,
no fun Marvel mommies.
yeah, well, it was comic book girl 19 that it's called them.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that. But like at least historically, the Marvel female characters have sort of been sort of killjoys a little bit.
Mhm.
Like they're kind of like the moms of the groups that they were in, rather than sort of like now they kind of now I feel like Marvel is also doesn't want to make any of their female characters necessarily like that sexy still. Maybe She-Hulk's going to be a little different. Like it does seem like that right now, but
Mhm.
I do kind of want to see some sexy female characters in a very positive light. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
In the Marvel universe, like I feel like it's okay for them to show like a top or a shirtless Chris Hemsworth, and we can like
Mhm.
gawk and like say, "Oh man,
Yeah,
like what a
sure.
sexy man." But it's totally not cool to do the same with a female character at this point in these movies. Which I mean, historically, maybe that is a good thing. I don't know, but at the same time, like I feel like I'm not a woman, obviously, but at the same time, I think other women acknowledge that some women are like kind of sexy, and there's nothing wrong that there's some women that feel comfortable being more provocative in the way they dress versus other women. So,
Right.
uh,
I mean, I think what Marvel has done, and like, and I don't know, maybe I've said this before, but I would say that it kind of feels like with the men of Marvel, I feel like they're kind of at like the relatively happy medium in terms of like sex appeal versus more conservative, you know. Um like they definitely leaned pretty hard into it with some of the like time traveling bits going on and like Endgame, for example. That's America's ass, that whole thing.
I mean, that was brought up basically in this first.
Yeah. And that was like exactly what brought that to mind, is that like, but and I think with what Marvel and maybe largely more Disney did is they went so far in the other direction with the female cast to like kind of just desexualize them, or to not over sexualize them, that they're kind of coming back to a happy medium that I think in time will.
Yeah,
Because I think you're right. I think it's more for diversity's sake. I don't think not every Marvel woman needs to be scantily clad. I think it's a ridiculous trope that was done for years in the comics.
yeah. But at this point, it would be almost sort of refreshing.
Yeah.
Like sort of like a sex pot female Marvel character.
Yeah. I mean,
Like the male characters are like kind of like, oh, whoa, I feel
right.
by using your sexuality in that way,
Mhm.
or female characters.
I know that I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think it was like Cersei in the comics, one of the Eternals. Um, like she's more or less like a very wholesome character in the films, but in the comics, apparently she was just like she was down. Like I think there was a particular panel that comes to my mind of like it's like, all right, good mission, Avengers. Hey, Cap, want to do a quickie? Like she like it was basically like came off as that. And Captain America's just like, oh no, thank you, respectfully, no, thank you, like the way that Cap would.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of like a lot of X-Men characters. I think that are more like in that vein, like Emma Frost, maybe.
Yeah, that was one that came to my mind immediately. Was Emma Frost.
I mean,
I,
in like Marvel characters, for good or bad, the women have been scantily clad for years because
mhm.
this is a male audience. For
Yeah,
not the men, a lot of men enjoy that kind of thing. So
Well, and I think part of it is good that the like overtly sexualized like woman character has been like
yeah.
tailored back. Is
Mhm.
that, you know, the a phrase that I just constantly keep hearing and just generally agree with a lot is like representation matters, you know, and we're like I think that's why characters like Captain Marvel, for example, like she is like two of the most powerful, if not the most powerful, like Marvel superheroes are women. Um, you might be a little off base calling Wanda much of a hero anymore. um,
And I say she's like an anti-hero.
a little bit, yeah, because like her motivations are things that were like very selfish, but also very understandable. You know,
Well, her mind was kind of taken over by the Darkhold.
yeah, and like I think it took like the motherly thing and made it much more evil than it necessarily needed to be. But on the other hand, like you have Captain Marvel, who like clearly is a very powerful character, and like in her own origin movie had been like tethered down and weakened by means of like an inhibitor collar of sorts, or like a device that
Yeah.
prevented her from accessing her full power. And even then, she was still a badass. And without it on, she's practically unstoppable.
I think we're like also getting close to something I think you wanted to bring up as well, which is specifically a lot of the brigading that's been going on in the show and overall sort of like
Mm-hmm.
the overtly feminist bent of some of the conversations that She-Hulk has with or um Jessica, what's her name again? I should know this. I just watched
Jessica
Jennifer
Jones.
had with Bruce, and it's something that
Oh,
I do want to get into. However, before we do that, I do kind of think we should just sort of discuss our overall feelings about the show beyond sort of like the overall impact on the culture or this like MCU. Have you heard that before? That term?
MCU. No, I haven't.
All the main characters are basically they're changing those roles over to women,
Mm-hmm.
which I don't feel like is necessarily bad or anything, but there's a lot of people that do. So anyway, so like this little bit behind this show. So it came out on Thursday, which is a new thing for Disney Plus. I don't know if you know that or not, Matt, but the episode
Mm-hmm.
actually came out on Thursday. It seems like
Yes,
each episode's going to be around 25, 30 minutes.
sure.
And this show to me definitely has sort of like a sitcom vibe almost to it. Sort of like in the vein of almost like a New Girl or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, like sort of like a different tone.
Yeah.
I picked
Well,
up on that as well.
I would say that, like, just as a brief aside, that like the only thing about this show, like the episode itself, that I didn't really like was it felt the fourth wall breaks felt very weird to me.
Yeah, but
Um,
that is actually part of Jennifer Walters' thing. Like that's where it's
okay, is that something she? If that's something she does regularly, then
it,
I'm totally
yeah, that's
because
what she was kind of like known for. And that's one thing you brought up. Like
mhm.
she didn't used to be that popular of a character, but then I can't remember who there
Yeah,
was
she
there was a
she
pretty popular run that went for about 60 episodes or sorry, 60 issues, I think.
mhm,
I want to say it was in the 1990s, which basically, yeah, she was a lawyer. She breaks the fourth wall.
mhm,
She's more of a sex pot in that, I believe. Like at
sure,
that era of comic books, like
mhm,
it treated women very differently in how they were portrayed. But it was
for
also a
sure.
very popular run. And then I think just a few years ago, I mean, it's like 10 years ago, I actually have the comic right here, or one of the
Oh,
graphic
cool.
novels. There was a very popular run of She-Hulk that they're
Mhm,
basing this set of episodes off of from the comics. However, it is
sure.
notable that that comic did not sell very well, which is something that I did watch. I don't know if you know who Grace Randolph is, but she did comment on that and how she thought this was not going to be
Yeah.
a popular show, which
Mhm,
I kind of, just based on the first episode, I think this could have major potential crossover appeal
yeah.
with some
Could seriously
demographic.
have legs, you know.
But
Like, yeah, no, I think knowing that more about the character now, that like the fourth wall breaks are fairly
yeah,
common for her, cause
yeah,
like
she's
knowing
very
that
much like
makes it
Deadpool in that way.
Yeah, because that's immediately what came to my mind is like, going into a Deadpool movie, if you've read the comics, which I haven't done a tremendous amount of, it's mostly been through other properties, video games mostly, that my exposure to
Keep talking
Deadpool.
this. I'm gonna grab the graphic novel while you're talking.
Yeah, yeah. But like in knowing that the fourth wall breaks are
This is it. I think this,
not being used as like I don't know, it would feel like kind of a shortcut method for them like to not approach something in a more organic way. But if that's something that happens in the comics, then I have really no room to talk. So
I mean, you can. I think that's a fair criticism if you felt like it was awkward. I mean, even though, like you mentioned last week with Thor and the goats, which has something I agreed with you, even though that is apparently something from the
yeah,
comics, I did find it a little bit overplayed.
Yes, and but yeah, no, I think I mean, yeah, we were kind of touching on, like how this show is gonna be, how it's gonna play out, and how it's gonna affect the Marvel universe in general, I guess. Um, I mean, it's really obvious that like there's a lot of intention in them having this phase of the MCU pushing way more woman heroes, and I think the saturation of male heroes on the front end of all the Marvel phases we've seen already is pretty intense, right? Like it, there just were way more men introduced as heroes and characters who were the focus of the story um, in the last phases. The phases that we've all grown to know and love over the last 10 years. Whereas now we're working more with a more female centric one, with a more woman centric one, and I think generally I think that's a good thing. I think it's changing perspective. It's making people look at things through a different lens. And there are awesome woman characters in Marvel that should be explored more. And in that, like my knowledge of Marvel um kind of ended with like the end with Endgame. Like I've read no Ms. Marvel, I've read no She-Hulk, I've read no Captain Marvel. Like a lot of these characters, it's all very new to me, and I'm really enjoying it. Like Ms. Marvel was awesome. I loved that show a lot, and I'm feeling like I think She-Hulk is going to kind of be in that same vein. I think it's going to be a really fun show, but I think it's going to be very different than what people have kind of come to expect.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so overall with just the episode in general, like I thought I guess Tatiana Maslany, who portrayed Jennifer Walters, did a really good job. I thought that Mark Ruffalo also did he performed well. Like I liked that relationship they had. I liked the detail where Tony and Bruce had built that little bar together, and right. Time during like the interim between Infinity War and Endgame, like just kind of chilling there. I like that. It was kind of a nice little character touch for both of them. It was a nice image. It was interesting to see that I want to say Sakari Craft come after Bruce.
Yeah.
Which makes you wonder what's going on there. There has been rumors that they're going to try and do a World War Hulk story with Bruce. And there's also been other rumors that Universal's hold on the character, at least the distribution rights, are ending. So that's where the rumors are coming from for that.
Okay. So yeah,
that might tie into that storyline.
I would be so down for that. World War Hulk is really
at this point, like Hulk is very Bruce Banner is very not Hulk in a way anymore. He doesn't have that, like he doesn't have like the other guy as he calls them around. Like it feels like he's very Bruce Banner all the time. Right. So it would be interesting to see that character kind of go to the dark side and then get thrown off the planet by our Marvel 616 version of the Illuminati. And come back like really peed off.
Yeah, really. Just
how that would play out. Yeah. So I think that might be setting up that storyline a little bit. At least that's kind of what people are thinking online. Like, where is that coming from?
Sure.
And yeah, just the overall them or Bruce basically training Jennifer, I found pretty fun. And like that was the bulk of the episode. the CGI was fine, like not movie level quality, but it was fine. I hate it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are looking for reasons to poke holes in how good the show is or could be. And yeah, I would agree. It's not like it was the most amazing CG in the world, but I think it was still very serviceable. Like it wasn't distracting.
Yeah, I liked how they ended the episode in the courtroom, and brought in Titania, Jamila Jamil, who is from
Good
you know,
place. I think that's what a lot of people.
the Good Place. Is
Yeah.
where I know her from.
Yeah.
So that's entertaining to see that actress being brought into the MCU. So
Mhm. Yeah, no, I actually had no idea who that who that villain was. So I'm glad you brought that name up.
yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly who she is. I do like the fact that they're going to use this show to maybe like fill in some of the lore gaps for things. Like Jennifer's literally a lawyer in the MCU. That's a really fun concept. And so
Right.
they could play with like the Sokovia Accords again. We know they're bringing back what's his name, Abomination.
Yeah.
I mean, Charlie Cox is going to be in this as Daredevil. He's going to show up as another lawyer in it. Apparently, Wong is going to be in it quite a bit, as we knew from the trailers, and just some of the overall like trailers of it. You saw there was some really weird, deep cuts of characters they're bringing in, which I love. Like I love that kind of weird stuff. So
Yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to, I don't know, by potentially putting like Abomination in a courtroom and like ruling on him, it's a little bit like putting the whole movie that he came from on trial and call like, we're gonna decide today whether you're worth keeping around or not. So like,
I mean, and there's rumors that he's going to be in um, Abomination is going to be in Thunderbolts as well as part of that team, which I think is a good idea.
Yeah, no, for sure.
The Dark Avengers need a version of the Hulk, right? So
right,
it makes
like,
sense that he would be in it.
Yeah, man, the show. I know, like even like I watched the trailer after having seen the episode. I had never watched like the official trailer, and just got really excited at the notion of everything that they could be doing in this show, and it feels like they're doing a lot already. So I don't know, because yeah, I agree. I think the idea of just it's like I'm a lawyer, I happen to be in the MCU. Okay, yeah, and I can turn into a Hulk. Like that feels like that would be the third thing she would describe as herself if she was giving you bullet points.
And two, like apparently from people that have seen the first 4 episodes, they've said that it does kind of play like a sitcom in the sense that each episode kind of does its own thing. There isn't, I mean, I think there's probably like an ongoing storyline, but for the most part, each episode has its own little plot that plays out. There's going to be 9 episodes, so most MCU shows have been 6 episodes so far. I think the only one that's differed from that was WandaVision, which also had shorter episodes up front. So, and
Yeah.
played on the idea of sitcoms too. WandaVision did so.
Right. See, now I'm definitely excited for more. I think this show is going to have a bit of an uphill battle because I just think that it's a strong female character, like a woman lead, and I think unfortunately the world of comic books and comic book movies is a definitely very male dominated arena, and so I think there's going to be some issues there. But outside of the haters saying things that aren't necessarily true for any kind of merit, I think this is going to be a cool show. I'm excited for more. Like,
I will say this like there's been previous Marvel shows obviously that have had women as the main characters. WandaVision, Miss Marvel. I would even say Hawkeye. Kate Bishop was a co-lead for that show at the very least. This show, beyond those shows, definitely feels like it's going to lean into the whole feminism aspect of it, where like there are several comments in the show and this how certain things played out where you're like, okay, this does have an agenda to it. Like you can kind of tell.
sure.
And I think that might bug some people more than others. I would say like if it could get to be too much, it wasn't too much for me in this first episode. Like I was okay with it.
Sure.
But in a way, like I feel like that I've seen that before with a lot of shows and movies where they've had sort of that same sort of vibe that this show has had in regards to feminism. And I don't know if it's ever really worked for me in the past, just as like a story, part of being the story and the character. So hopefully it's different for this one. Because I don't think it's a bad topic to cover. I just don't think it's usually done very well. But I could be wrong with this one.
I mean, one thing that I do like about how they've approached She-Hulk as a character, because Bruce had his whole playbook prepared to be able to use to train Jennifer to be a Hulk, right? And like this, it's just part of her life now. There's no turning back from that. And but an observation I had this morning was that like Hulk as a character, he's an older, more like legacy product of Marvel, who has been written by men, probably primarily, um, from an era of men in which I don't think had a fantastic grasp of like emotional complexity. I think that like angry men were just angry in the 80s and earlier. and and I think that like they wrote a character, a male character with anger problems, who his whole way of dealing with that was just suppressing the anger. Whereas I think She-Hulk is a character who, like, yes, anger does trigger that, but like she does bring up some good points, and like women have like it just in that we're both men, like women have issues we've never had to deal with before. Um, and they have to approach the world in a different way that we have to approach it. And so I think there's a lot of merit there to the argument that like how Jen controls her Hulk power and how it is expressed and how that comes out is going to be a lot different than Bruce's. And even just like with or without the other guy being involved, right? Like, and I think it did need to be said in the episode that like, yeah, she's had to deal with being angry her whole life, but having to like deal with it because of men in her life who have uh, treated her differently or as lesser because she's a woman, right? So I think having that conversation using the Hulk as a conduit for it, I think is really appropriate. I think it'll be very interesting to see more of that if that conversation comes back up again.
Yeah, like I'm a little. I don't think I'm gonna wade into the waters of that just because I feel like it could get pretty controversial no matter what I said about it. So, like I don't, and like my feelings about this are very like it's not a hill I'm gonna die on because I don't really have a strong stance either way. Whatever I would say now would be off the cuff, basically on this. I will say that Marvel back in the day, we're already at 10 minutes. I'm so surprised. That Marvel is actually very progressive under Stan Lee, and I would be remiss not to bring that up as far as like how they handled characters dealing with race and especially with race and even like gender and stuff like that. So, and actually, She-Hulk was created by writer Stan Lee. And she first appeared in the Savage She-Hulk #1 came out February 1980.
Sure.
So.
Oh yeah. I mean, I will say that yeah, like Marvel has a history of being much more inclusive. I'm sure we've probably all seen that. The missive of Stan Lee talking about about just being inclusive.
There's a documentary on Amazon Prime that I watched that was pretty interesting about like how Stan Lee basically was getting really bored with the comic book industry, and so he basically put out Fantastic Four as sort of his like Hail Mary, and then it became really popular, and then from there, Marvel just kind of became this like cultural institution with all these characters that they were coming up with. So
That's cool that it was the Fantastic Four. It's actually surprising to hear that, given where the Fantastic Four is currently.
yeah, I mean, well, that was the first. I think the first real big comic that Stan Lee made that was in the line of that. Like I know there was some characters that came before,
Right.
like characters you still know about that came before Stan Lee. I think like Captain America for one, Namor or Namor.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some of these characters go way back even before Stan Lee, and I don't remember what Marvel was called before it became Marvel Comics. What was it called? I should know this. Anyway, Timely Comics is what it was, or was it Atlas Comics? I don't know. Anyway, one of those two. It became Marvel later. It's Timely. I don't know. I'll just say what my overall feelings about it are real fast. So if we want to wrap this up before we're out of time.
Sure.
I liked it. I'm excited to see where it goes. Generally excited. I like that it connected so much to the MCU overall, which I know that's been criticism of other shows, but I kind of miss. I like that it's all connected. So like Moon Knight felt very disconnected from things. Even Miss Marvel, even though it did have some crossover in some aspects, felt kind of disconnected. So I'm excited. This one seems to like have like a lot of connections to the overall MCU. So that's exciting for me.
Well, and I think it'll be really cool to, because I agree. Like, I'm really excited to see more of this, and it makes sense. Like, I think we're kind of getting into more of a little bit of the realism of the MCU, in that, like, there are going to be, like, the Avengers. Like, really, the only reason they were able to do anything that they were doing was because Tony was bankrolling the whole thing in the background, right? And a lot of these other heroes are not particularly like well funded. Like, looking at your Daredevils and your Ms. Marvels, they don't have a ton of money, and so they're going to potentially be held, be at the end of doing what they need to do. They're going to be held liable for the damage that was done, potentially.
I mean, I think looking at Spider-Man, like
Mhm.
bankrolled by Tony Stark, but now we're kind of seeing a reset where he's going to more of his like origins and
right. And in the moment where he was not bankrolled anymore and was in trouble, Daredevil, a lawyer, Matt Murdock, was there to help him, right? And so I think like Jen's going to be there for these other heroes, and that's going to be a consistent thing in the MCU now, or at least I hope it's a consistent thing, because I am so on board for a show where it's mostly about like lawyer things, but like a supervillain's on trial and Jen has to represent them. Like that sounds very interesting. So yeah, I'm excited to see what's going on more with this show. I think everything looks really good. I think the acting and the writing's been pretty funny, and definitely was very funny getting the F word cut off in the post credits with Captain America fun.
I will say this about it. I did enjoy it quite a bit. I would probably give it like a B plus. However, I don't think it's going to be one of those shows where I'm going to have to stay up to midnight to watch. I think it's probably going to be like a Thursday morning, like get a cup of coffee, put it on the background. I don't think it's going to be like I'm dying to see what happens next. I could be wrong. I feel like it's probably designed to be not that way, not to be like I have to stay up to midnight to watch this thing. I don't think it's supposed to be that kind of show.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm kind of on board for that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't bug me. If it is just like a sitcom. In a way, though, I think shows like this work a little better when all the episodes are just released at once instead of having to wait a week.
It's the easy listening of shows. And I would agree. I would like to have it all available right now, but like I've never really been the stay up till midnight type person for a lot of things.
Me, Star Wars, I will do it.
Yeah.
Some of the Marvel stuff I actually really loved WandaVision was coming out.
Yeah.
I thought that show was some of the stuff they did in that show I was just like blown away with. Like when they brought on Evan Peters again as Quicksilver.
Right.
I was so surprised that they went that direction. It was just amazing.
Yeah, I think
Rumor
I
has
think they were surprised by how everyone's heads exploded in that moment.
Well,
Like,
and rumor has it that he is coming back to the MCU. Evan Peters playing who knows who, Ralph Boner perhaps, but I don't know. But there was something in WandaVision where like he may have had an undercover identity apparently. So we'll see what happens, right? Like I don't know. So
see, I would just be. I mean, I'm looking forward to them finally integrating the X-Men into the MCU because I mean, the X-Men just there are so many cool characters and there's so much depth there to explore. And I don't know, like I don't need like a whole nother set of Wolverine movies necessarily, but I'm on board for Wolverine being in the MCU,
yeah,
like in a big way. So
he's always been kind of my favorite. So
yeah, he's always been like a huge favorite of yours, and
I never was extremely attached to Hugh Jackman's portrayal of his character. Like I know a lot of people love that character, like his version of it, but I'm still more attracted. I'm still more like attuned with like the cartoon version of
like the
Wolverine
hairy, short, like
or
more
the one from like
burly.
X-Men Legends,
Yeah,
that's what I do. You know?
right. Like, yeah, no, for sure. Like, I think we might get a more like comic book appropriate version of Wolverine
And I
in the
get the
future.
impression, and we are running out of time here, that Feige really loves the old X-Men uh, animated show. He's bringing it
Yes,
back. Like he apparently he was the one that insisted on including the X-Men theme in
Miss
Miss
Marvel.
Marvel when the X-Men like that brought up that she was a mutant. So
So cool.
yeah,
I
so
know. I was literally out of my chair, freaking the hell out when I heard that. I was like, they used the X Men stinger. Ah.
I mean they did the same thing in Doctor Strange too, which I loved when they brought in Xavier.
Oh yeah, no, like
It's like yellow whatever wheelchair thing.
yeah, the hover chair. Oh man, no, I'm really excited. Yeah, you're right. We're basically out of time, but yeah, I want more X Men. Yeah, just give me like
X Men
really cool
honestly
stories.
always been my favorite in Marvel
Mhm.
because they're the weirdest and I love it. So
Yeah, right. They're the misfits. But all right, cool. Well, we're at a minute here. We're gonna wrap it up here. This has been episode 50 of the Nerds of the North podcast. And given the feedback we've gotten, we're not going to change a damn thing because apparently it's working. Whatever this is, no feedback is good feedback. But at any rate, thank you all for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode, and hope you all have a fantastic week. We will see you with that.
bye everyone. Happy 50th.
Yeah, happy 50th.